Hello and welcome to episode 59 of Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty. Of course, I am your host, Rick Doherty. Today's episode is going to take a little break from talking theme parks, but I promise I will reward you all for it. At the end of the show, I'll tell everyone how to get registered to win a Walt Disney World annual pass holder magnet. Since we're going live on St. Patrick's Day, I thought this was the perfect excuse to discuss my upcoming pilgrimage on the Ireland Way to raise money and awareness for the nonprofit organization Break the Silence Against Domestic Violence. First, our friend Sarah Says, who you may know as Sarah from Seattle, will be here to talk with me about the logistics of making the 620-mile hike through Ireland. After that, I'll be talking with Dana Rutherford from Break the Silence Against Domestic Violence. She's going to be filling us in on what your donations will be doing to help survivors of abuse and their families. This is a cause that is very, very, very important to me. There's a link in the description to donate. Right now, we're starting things off with Sarah Says. Thanks for joining us, Sarah.
Thank you. It's great to be back.
So before we get into the main topic of the show today, we're going to be talking about something that just happened earlier this week. Universal Orlando Resort announced a quiet room that is specifically intended for children with autism. Sarah, you actually have a son who has autism. So I just wanted to talk to you about how much does this mean to you that the theme parks are starting to think about this stuff?
I think it's absolutely amazing. When I saw the initial, the first time I saw it, I should say, I was on TikTok and I saw it and I sent it to my husband and I'm like, or it was on Twitter and I tagged my husband and I'm like, oh my gosh, look at this. This is so amazing, because I feel like a lot of times, even though my son isn't at a place right now where we feel comfortable taking him to any theme parks yet, just because it's so much overstimulation. But when I saw that, it gave me some hope as a parent of an autistic child, because that it happens. Any child gets overstimulated, and especially autistic children. And a lot of times there's not a place, unless you go back to your hotel, which, as we know, in some places can be a long jaunt back to your hotel, that you can remove your child from the situation and let them take as much time as they need to calm down and be quiet and have little activities to do that can help them basically reset themselves. And so when I saw that Universal had put these in and seeing the pictures, the colors are muted. There's still like minions in there, which is super cute. The busy wall, it looks like there's something they can climb on, the curtains so you can block out the sun. All of that is just, it's a game changer and the thing is, I feel like it's not even just for kids. I feel like anyone who is autistic and visiting the parks could use this resource, because it doesn't mean you have to go in and play with toys or things like that. You can just go in and be able to disconnect for a little bit and calm your brain down and just realign. It's amazing. I'm so excited.
I think it's really funny that last year when gas was $2.25, you're like, I can't wait to get my son to Walt Disney World. I can't wait to get him to Disneyland. And now you're like, I think there's too much stimulation.
Yeah, it really, you know what? It's true. But I am excited to when we finally do get to take him. It's just you don't really think about it until all of a sudden, Universal pulls out this new card of oh, here's a new room. And my son also, he has autism, but he also has pretty severe ADHD. And so, thinking about a lot of things that when I'm there and when we were there, I just kept thinking gosh, he would love it so much. He'd love this so much. And then coming back and getting the reality check from my parents and my husband of can you imagine if he had a breakdown in the middle of all this, what would happen? And he's like, and think about how much money we're spending on it. I'm like, that is fair. So I'm still very excited. And I'm even more excited now, though, especially Universal. I really hope Disney jumps aboard this train of getting the quiet rooms, because I feel like we'll go when we're comfortable taking him, right? But we also will feel even more comfortable knowing that there's a place that we don't have to take him back to the hotel room if he needs a break.
Absolutely. So great job, Universal Orlando Resort. This is definitely a game changer for theme parks. Disney follows suit. So now we're going to move on to the main topic of today's show. We're going live on St. Patrick's Day, and this seemed like the perfect time to really go in depth into my upcoming pilgrimage on the Ireland Way because, well, St. Patrick's Day. So I thought I would let you take the lead today and do what I normally do on the podcast, and that's you get to ask the questions of me, and I'll sort of sit back and try to be as witty as you are when you answer my questions.
Oh, you have big shoes to fill today. Okay, so I know that I wasn't super familiar with what the Ireland Way was, and I have Irish heritage and my great grandparents. And so, can you kind of explain to all of us, the listeners and everybody, kind of what is the Ireland Way?
So I'm actually going to go on a little bit of a side tangent here, but don't worry, I will get back to the main purpose and why this is relevant. In 2012, I was in Target, and they used to have $5 DVDs in one section at Target. And I saw this movie called The Way, and it had Martin Sheen in it, and I love Martin Sheen, and it was $5. So I'm like, I'll pick this up. I don't even care what it's about. I'm sure Martin Sheen is good in it. And it turned out the movie was about El Camino from France to Santiago, Spain. It is a pilgrimage. I would say definitely the biggest one of these throughout the world. There are hostels the whole way. Thousands and thousands of people do it every year. I follow a group that tells you how many people completed their Camino, is what they call it, every single day, and it's in the hundreds most days. At that moment, I said, I am going to walk El Camino at some point in my life. And for some reason, I picked my 50th birthday was when I was going to walk El Camino from southern France to Santiago, Spain. Then I got involved in a whole bunch of these hiking groups where people do other pilgrimages, and that is when I found out about the Ireland Way. And then I thought, I can't wait until I'm 50 and do El Camino, and then a couple years later do the Ireland Way. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to do the Ireland Way first because it's going to be more complicated. It's going to be harder. The one that's more touristy, I'll do that when I'm 50, and I'll need more breaks, and I'll need more people around me, and I won't be able to do as many things on my own. So the Ireland Way is a 620-mile walk from the southwestern tip of the island of Ireland all the way past the international border and into Northern Ireland, basically as far north as you can go on the island. You're going through a lot of towns in the western part of Ireland. I don't know how familiar most people are with the geography of Ireland, but basically the closer you are to Britain, the more it's city. That's where Belfast is located. That's where Dublin's located. But a lot in the west is very, very rural. There's only like 7 million people who live on the island itself. So that just goes to show how tiny some of these towns are going to be throughout the course of my journey. But I'm going to walk those 620 miles, and that is certainly the goal.
That is a very, very long way. But so when you're on this pilgrimage and you're walking the 620 miles, how long about do you think it'll take you to do that?
Yeah, that's a great question. A lot of people set aside 50 days to do this. I am of the mindset, especially when you look at all the things we've dealt with over the past 2 years, it's better to be safe than sorry. So I'm giving myself a few extra days to be there. I'm going to be leaving in the very beginning of June, and I'm not going to be getting back to the U.S. until August 9th.
Wow, that's such a long time. That'll be great. And when you're traveling along this route, are you staying in like hotels? Are you staying in hostels? Are you camping? Or is it kind of a mix of everything?
It's going to be a mix of everything. I recently bought my tent at REI, so I'm going to be setting it up periodically just to make sure I'm used to setting it up, tearing it down really quickly. I have the thinnest excuse for a mattress. It's like a foam thing that's about an inch thick. I'm sure that's going to be good on my old bones and joints. But I'm also going to be staying in some hotels when I'm in some of these cities. You know, listen, I'm a spoiled American. Every couple of days, I'm going to have a shower. I'm going to want to wash my clothes.
Right.
I'm going to want to get a good meal, and I'm not going to want to sleep on the ground. The way the geography works out in Ireland, it's going to be the beginning of the trip where I'm going to be doing a lot more camping, and then I'm going to be heading up further north. And once you get into Northern Ireland, it's a lot more, not urban, but you're going to be hitting a lot more population centers. So at the beginning, I'm going to be doing a lot more camping, but yes, I'm going to be staying in hotels quite frequently. I've been saving up for this for over 2 years. So as we're going to talk about a little later in the show, I'm trying to use this as a way to raise money and awareness for the organization Break the Silence Against Domestic Violence. And one of the things I wanted to make sure was I wasn't asking for any money to help me do this. I wanted to make sure I had all the money and I was able to do this without needing to ask for any help. I did get some like birthday and Christmas presents from family who gave me gift cards to buy my gear, but besides that, and it wasn't even a whole lot of my gear. Not that I didn't appreciate it, Danielle and Petey. So I wanted to make sure that I saved so much money that I would be able to not have to worry about it. If my legs hurt, I could get a hotel that night and really, really rest. If I needed to take 2 days off, I wanted to give myself enough time that I could do that. I could take 2 days to rest if I twist an ankle or do something like that. I believe in being over-prepared, and since this is something that I have been preparing for such a long time, I'm not going to be doing this all the time. I'm not going to be taking 2 months off from my job all of the time. So I want to make sure that if I'm going to take 2 months off, if I need 2 months and a week, just make sure you're prepared because, like I said, in the last 2 years, we've seen anything can happen at any time. So being prepared for what you know is going to be a challenge and then adjusting from there.
Yeah, exactly. And, props to you for planning all this and everything that you put into it, because like I said at the beginning, I didn't even know what it was until you were telling me about it, which is so amazing. Is there anywhere like in Ireland that you're going to travel? I'm assuming that it is a set path that you will be taking because other people have done this and you're not just going to go all like willy-nilly, I'm going to make my own path up to Northern Ireland. Is there anywhere in Ireland that you're like super excited to trek through?
So there are certainly some towns that I'm interested to see because you've just heard about them your whole life. Like I'll be going through Tipperary, for example, and that's kind of a famous town. There's the song, It's a Long Way to Tipperary, which I have a feeling will be going through my head as I'm walking there. I'm imagining it is probably a very true sentiment. So there are some towns like that, and I am excited to see them. But I had another friend ask me once, like, why are you doing this? Why don't you just do more of a sightseeing thing? Like, a lot of people visit Ireland and they go to Dublin and they go to some of these places and they see things of historical note or that are tourist traps, or they go to Trinity College or they go to St. Patrick's Cathedral or any of these the Temple Bar. What I want to do, however, as somebody who does have Irish heritage, and maybe this is the only time in my life I'm going to get the chance to go to Ireland, and I want to experience Ireland. And this is a way that takes me from seeing all the things that are in the brochures, all the things that everybody wants to hit. I will hit some of them in the first couple days while I adjust to the time difference and everything. This is just picking a random path, and I guess it's not that random because, yes, people travel the Ireland way. I'm holding right now in my hand as we talk about it the guidebook for the Ireland way. They don't write guidebooks if a lot of people don't do it, but it's a way to experience the country and see things that I wouldn't see if I just did the regular sightseeing tourist stuff. I have taken a lot of road trips in the United States where I decided to, not when gas was this expensive, but when I lived in Arizona and I was going back to Pennsylvania to be the best man in my friend's wedding, I decided to drive and just pick some random routes on the way up and then on the way back so that I would see things that I wouldn't necessarily go out of my way. I was never going to fly to Cheyenne, Wyoming. But if it was only going to add 4 hours to my drive time, I'd stop in Cheyenne, Wyoming. That's sort of what I'm doing here. I'm trying to experience Ireland by seeing Irish people, by being a part of these small towns that everybody else skips.
I think that's great because I feel like that's really an authentic way to get to see and experience a country, because I am someone who is totally like, I love to play tourist, and I'm like in Chicago, hop on one of those buses that takes you around the city. But then when you do go off the beaten path, which you are exactly what you are doing from the sounds of it, you do get to experience the people and the culture and all the things that you normally wouldn't think of by reading like the tour manual from Barnes and Noble. Are you visiting anywhere else besides Ireland? I know before you had kind of talked about potentially Scotland or England or somewhere else. Have you decided in your journeys after you finish your pilgrimage if you're going to visit anywhere else?
Unfortunately, no. I was originally planning, we have a mutual friend, Amanda, who lives in Scotland, and I thought this would be a great excuse to try to visit Scotland. Like I said, you try to make excuses to visit these places that you wouldn't necessarily visit otherwise. She is very cautious, as are we, by the way, about everything going on with the pandemic, and she didn't think it was maybe the best idea to have somebody coming from Florida, where maybe it hasn't been handled the best of anywhere in the world, and we had spiking numbers at the time, so we ended up canceling those plans. And now I'm just going to fly into Dublin. I'm going to spend a few days in Dublin seeing some of the sites that are really important to me, and that'll also give me the time, like I said earlier, to adjust to the time difference. And then I'm going to be taking a bus, and I'm going to be going to the starting point, and then after that, I'm just going to let what happens to be in front of me be the sightseeing that I do there. Unfortunately, I'm not even going to get the chance to see the Star Wars Island.
Oh, that's okay. You'll see a lot of other really cool stuff.
But I did want to see the Star Wars Island because it looks really cool. The island from, I guess, the end of The Force Awakens and all through The Last Jedi. That is actually an island in Ireland.
Is that the island where with all the porgs and where like Luke Skywalker lives and drinks blue milk, trains Rey?
He drinks green milk there. You got to go watch those movies again.
I've only seen them like once or twice.
But yes, that is the same island. And those huts, for lack of a better term, are actually there.
Oh, cool.
Because it was like a monastery way back in the day. So, but that is a complete sidetrack because I'm not going to see them. So
That's true. Well, I do have one more question that I think our Walt Disney World fans and our Disney fans will find very interesting, because I know I asked you this because I was just like, I don't know what's going to happen. You talk to us a lot and give us great reviews on vegetarian and vegan food in the parks. So we know Ireland is a very meat and potatoes kind of country. And so what are your plans for when you are doing this pilgrimage to stay sustained in food?
So that's probably the best question you've asked, because it is the hardest thing I'm going to have to figure out here, because I don't even eat fish, and Western Ireland is a lot of fish. Luckily for me, when I do these multi-day hikes, even here in the U.S., I tend to load up a lot on my proteins through nuts and some granolas and things like that. So I definitely will be loading my pack up with a lot of stuff that doesn't go bad, that doesn't have to be cooked. So when I'm out in the wild, if you will, I won't be eating meat anyway, because that's what I would be doing even if I was here in the U.S. I am hoping that it is still a European country. I'm hoping that there are going to be more than just salads, but if all I'm eating is salads and potatoes, I've had worse meals in my life, you know?
Yeah, that, you know what, that's very fair. And then you can come back and you can let us know pub fare that is friendly for our vegan vegetarian friends who may be going to visit Ireland, which would be super helpful. But yeah, I was very concerned for you when I thought about that one day. I was sitting there like, oh my goodness, Rick's going to starve while he's in Ireland.
And I'm not going to lie, 2 months being away from Walt Disney World and whatever Epcot Festival is happening and whatever new cupcakes they're putting out there for Instagram, I'm going to be happy to sort of lose a little weight on this thing. So that will be a challenge, but also part of the perks, I think, is getting back to testing myself in those ways where I'm just going to be eating what I need to make it to the next town, to make it the next few hours, where I'm not going to be eating anything in excess. I want to pack as light as humanly possible, so maybe it not being that accommodating is also going to be a little bit of a benefit. Yes, I'm going to make sure that I'm safe. I'm going to be healthy on this thing. But I'm definitely expecting to maybe have to buy a new belt at some point in one of these small towns.
Hey, that's okay. You're going to come back and you're going to eat a cupcake and you're just going to be like, oh gosh, I feel so sick. Hey, you know what? I don't know if Marissa is going to be there while you're gone, but she could send you updates of the food and things like that. Because I know I unfortunately will not be there. But
I swear, if Marissa goes to Walt Disney World when I'm in another country, I will be so mad at her.
Do you hear that, Marissa?
Sarah, thank you so much for being back on the show, and this time sort of asking me the questions, which was a fun little role reversal here.
Yeah, that was fun. I liked thinking of questions and things, and don't worry, Rick is not going to be abandoning us while he's in Ireland. The podcast will still go on.
Yeah, that's right. We're actually trying to come up with some fun topics that will be sort of evergreen. One of the things we've been throwing around is doing a trivia contest where I serve as the host and we have Sarah go up against Marissa in Disney, Harry Potter, different trivia like that. We're going to see how that works out. And that's something that, of course, can run any of these Thursdays while I'm gone. We'll talk about some other things that are a little more generic that don't have to change all of the time. And then when I get back, we'll be talking about the trip, and there will be a new Epcot festival. We'll be talking about food and wine, of course. So there will be plenty to discuss when I get back as well. So thank you so much for doing this today, Sarah. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Now we're turning things over to Dana Rutherford from Break the Silence Against Domestic Violence. I'm raising money and awareness for BTSADV with my pilgrimage. Here is Dana to tell us about the difference your donation will make for survivors of abuse.
Hello, good to see you.
So as I am trying to do this to raise money for Break the Silence Against Domestic Violence, I just want the listeners to know, what are some of the things that you do at Break the Silence Against Domestic Violence? What is the mission statement of this particular organization?
Well, Break the Silence Against Domestic Violence was founded 10 years ago, so it's our 10-year anniversary, and we have helped numerous survivors and families of survivors of domestic violence throughout the years. At Christmas time, we have the Holidays of Hope campaign that helps give Christmas gifts. We have Grants of Hope that gives scholarships to family members of lost loved ones or the survivors themselves to go toward college. We have done numerous things in the communities, and we've just tried to be a middleman and an advocate for those who are survivors of domestic violence. So as we know, when you're in it, you can be kind of where your brain is not working sometimes. And so sometimes you just need that help. You need somebody to call and talk to and listen and advocate and find resources. And that's what we try to do. We try to be a listening ear, but we also try to find and connect resources for survivors and get them the help that they need. And we also do things that are really fun, like the Sister Survivor Retreat, where people come together to have a retreat together, a healing and emotional time. So we really try to put out there positivity, but also highlight the things that are really a problem in this world with domestic violence.
And I know, just going by the name of the organization, one of the things you do is give survivors a chance to tell their story, which I think is so powerful, because somebody who's trapped in a domestic violence situation might not be able to see that there is a path out of it. And when you let people who have survived these things tell their stories about how they did it, show that right now they're literally living their best lives.
Mm-hmm.
That can be so powerful. Talk a little bit about that, about letting survivors talk about what happened to them.
Yeah, so we have a place even on our website where you can come and share your survivor story. And we've seen a lot of healing in those moments. We've seen people on our social media share their stories. And it's true, there's just something about breaking your silence, because I know in my situation, when I went through abuse, I was scared to even call it abuse. I didn't even know I was being abused at times until it became physical, because so many times we think abuse, we think a black eye, or we think the things that we hear in the news, but a lot of people are suffering in silence and they don't even know they're being abused. So when someone has an avenue to just break that silence and to speak, there's power in that. And we want to empower people, survivors, men, women, all ages, to be able to take that power back. Because one thing with abuse is you feel powerless. You feel like your control is taken. You feel like your will is taken. And so to have that, to be able to share that, that's not only therapeutic, but it's giving your power back. It's taking your power back from the person that tried to take it from you. So we promote hope, and we want to show that there is life after abuse, and you can thrive and you can survive, but it also hurts at times. And we don't want to always just be, there's times we're super positive, but there's times that we talk about real things. We want to make sure that we hit it from all angles, because abuse, as all of us know, it's an up and down journey. Healing is an up and down journey. So we try to go along for the ride with them.
That's such an interesting thing you said about trying to stay positive while also being realistic, because a couple weeks ago on the podcast, we had an Instagrammer, and she suffers from chronic illness. And she became an Instagram influencer about chronic illness because she would see these other people with chronic illness doing all of these things and sharing it on social media and being so inspiring, or they thought they were inspiring. But then she said, I would see that as somebody with chronic illness, and I would feel like I wasn't doing enough. I wasn't handling it well enough, that it was almost too positive, like a toxic positivity. So I think it is interesting how you talk about balancing that, saying, yes, you can get out of this situation. There is a better life ahead of you, but also saying, if it's hard one day, if it's hard for years even, don't give up, because it will get better, and it's not always going to look like that picture at the end goal line.
Absolutely. We try to show both, because I think it's important to have both. I think it's important at times. Like I know when I started following Break the Silence on their social media, I followed it because there was this, wow, I'm going through the same journey right now. And so I needed sometimes the positive, hope giving, encouragement. And then other days I needed to kind of be sad and to hurt and to go through it. And I needed validation that I wasn't alone. And so I think that it's important to do both, because we know that healing, some days are ugly and some days are pretty. But we do know that there is hope and there is life after. There is a life that you can actually thrive and take what you've done and take what you've gone through and help somebody else. But yeah, there's times that sometimes people mean well and they say things, and even in their saying things, they can kind of come across like insincere and insensitive. So we try not to do that with Break the Silence.
And I think this is probably pretty obvious, but so many of the people who both work at Break the Silence Against Domestic Violence and who volunteer there are survivors themselves. This is a small organization that does big things, I would say. So it's not like one of those big national organizations. It's one of the reasons I tried to pick Break the Silence Against Domestic Violence. I wanted something where the amount of money that I could raise, or that we could raise as a community who listens to the podcast and some of my other endeavors, that amount of money wouldn't make a dent for the American Cancer Society. It wouldn't have any sort of impact on some of these bigger organizations. I wanted to pick one where every dollar really does help do tangible good things. So like you mentioned, $1,000 going to help somebody get their education. $1,000 is probably what they spend on lunches some days at some of these bigger organizations.
Yeah.
But it's so important to realize when somebody's trying to get their life back on track, the difference $1,000 towards getting a college education or getting a community college education or a trade school education, this $1,000 could be the difference between making it and not making it, especially with everything that's going on right now with grocery prices and gas prices. That's a big deal, and that can really help somebody.
When you come and you partner with Rick, you are not only just helping a survivor, but you could be starting a journey. I know that I went back to school, and that's how I ended up at Break the Silence. So I've come full circle where I was a survivor and now I am helping survivors. But that's because I got my education. And not saying that you have to have a college degree to do things. We know that, there's trade schools, things like that. But just to have that power to be like, hey, I want to dream again. These things were dreams of mine, but they got pushed aside because of abuse. So not only are you giving someone possibly a chance to, make a life for themselves, but you're also giving them power back. And I love the fact that, Rick, that you're doing this because so $1,000 is the scholarship that we give, the grants that we give toward the legacy families. These are people that have lost loved ones to domestic violence, the children. So if their parents passed away, that would go toward them. Also survivors of domestic violence. So we try to give back because, as you can imagine, how hard that would be to lose your parent to domestic violence. These children are left with a lot of trauma that they have to endure. They're left with a lot of just horrible, horrible things. So to give them that light, to just give them something like, hey, we can't take back what's been done to you, but we can try to help you have a better life. Let's do something to give them something tangible. And that's what I love about this organization. It's something tangible that can be taken and used for a long time. And it just takes a matter of partnering with somebody that's doing something amazing, like going all the way to Ireland. You can do so much good in just partnering with this situation. And I think that once again, it's incredible what you're doing. And I really hope that through what you've been through and through your journey and now what you're doing in Ireland, it's a testimony of showing that somebody can go through this, can, come out of it and can do something amazing. But when you help support Rick in this, you are also doing something amazing. So just because we can't all go to, I wish I can go to Ireland too, but I got a bunch of kids at home. So, even in supporting Rick, we're doing something great too. So if you're listening and you want to help him, just know that this is going to do something for somebody that you could never imagine.
Thank you so much, Dana Rutherford from Break the Silence Against Domestic Violence. We're going to have all the links in the description so that you can help out. You can check out the website. You can read some really great blogs if you're ever wondering what I do for the organization. Thank you so much, Dana. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
In the upcoming weeks and months, we'll be doing a lot to raise money and to make you feel like you're a part of my journey. Like I said before, there is a link in the description. Please feel free to help out. Anything that you can donate would be much appreciated. As I promised, it's time for a little giveaway of a Walt Disney World annual pass holder magnet. There's a pinned tweet about this fundraiser on the Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty page at TGTT Podcast. Share that tweet on Twitter and make sure you're following the page. Everybody who does that is eligible to win the magnet. I'll pick the winner on Thursday, March 24th with a random number generator. This is just a fun way to reward all of my theme park people for sticking with me and getting the word out about what I'm going to be doing this summer. This has been episode 59 of Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty. We'll return to the theme park chatter next Thursday. Until then, have a great week.